welcome to our 6th Converge User Summit. Since its launch in June of last year, we have hosted more than 30 speakers and more than 5,000 Cityworks users and partners. You have been able to keep your communities going strong and vibrant through a challenging time for your residents, and we applaud you for your resilience and service. So along with our lineup today, we have also been gearing up for the upcoming Cityworks Innovate User Conference. If you haven't heard, that will be our virtual event held live June 8th and 9th. Many of our expert staff will be presenting the latest features and functionalities of Cityworks that Cityworks is powering. We will have both live and on-demand sessions highlighting the innovations of the Cityworks platform. And we are working on the agenda, so keep an eye out for that in the coming weeks. And along with that, I've got a poll for you. As we are seeing everybody sign in today, we're going to go ahead and launch that poll. Are you registered for the Cityworks Innovate User Conference? If you haven't registered, you can do so at cityworks.com, and it's free. Let's go ahead and see what those results are. Aha, 70%. That is awesome. Good work. We are looking forward to seeing you there. And so you can spread the news amongst your organizations. Invite everyone. This is for your peers, your staff, your field workers, and leadership to attend. I'm excited to see that there is such a strong attendance here that has already registered. So nice work. And we look forward to seeing you there. So Cityworks has actually hit a milestone. This year is our 25th year anniversary. And many of you have heard the story of how Cityworks was launched. Brian Haslam and a few colleagues had the idea why he was running the University of Utah's Digit Lab. These are going to be some fun pictures here. The idea was simple: create a public asset management software solution that would help municipalities and utilities manage their infrastructure challenges. There are some details I will leave out for today in the interest of time, but perhaps the most important decision Brian made was to partner with Esri 25 years ago. We have been partnered closely with Esri since the very beginning, as you can see here, these early photos. The impact of that decision has led to creating and designing the Cityworks platform to be the only ArcGIS pure play in the world. A true GIS-centric platform that many have come to know and love, a system that is scalable to meet the demands of any organization where GIS and operations work hand in hand with no redundancy of data. And you can see here, we have a great relationship here with Jack Dangelman. And Brian and Jack have actually remained friends and for years, and our partnership and alignment will only continue to grow in the coming years as we expand into more solutions with Trimble and partner solutions. So our goal remains the same from the beginning, which is helping you build a more resilient, safe, and sustainable community. So as we get started here, I have a few housekeeping items I'd like to share. Today's session is being recorded, and we will email the recording to all registered attendees. Watch for that recording in about a week. I have placed today's agenda in the handouts, so feel free to save and refer to throughout this session. If you have any questions during this event, feel free to add them to the chat box, and we will do our best to address the questions after each presentation. We will have 6 presentations today with one quick break in the middle. And I want to start out doing something a little bit different this time. I want to give a shout out to all of our customers and partners joining us today and for helping tell their story. And Converge cannot happen without the help of these amazing people. And it has It's been great to get to know each one of them as we work together on this. And I'm going to give my friends a few minutes here to introduce themselves. Jason.
Thank you, Cindy. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Channon. I'm a senior solution engineer. I work on Esri's global water practice.
Hi, I'm Heather Simoncini, Business Unit Systems and Applications Coordinator. And I work primarily on the development and integration of our PLL system for the city of Tallahassee.
Oh, Ellis, we can't hear you.
Well, I was muted, that was why. My name's Ellis Zettler. I'm the Asset Management Manager for the Brunswick Glynn Joint Water Sewer Commission down here in coastal Georgia.
Awesome.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jessica Rogers. I'm the project manager for the Cityworks implementations at the City of Tallahassee, and I'm excited to be here today.
Hi folks, I'm Ellie Macklin. I'm a business system analyst with Jackson Energy Authority. I manage our Cityworks implementations and some of our document management, and I'll be co-presenting today with John Taylor.
Good morning, I'm John Taylor, and I work with Ellie, and I'm mainly a GIS focused subject matter expert here at Jackson Energy Authority, but I wear other hats as well.
Hi, I'm Eric Myers. I'm a business analyst programmer for asset management at the city of Beaverton. So it's nice to be here.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks for your help. I know you are busy, busy people, and this isn't easy to pull off, but you make it look easy, so thank you. So as we get ready to move into our first presenter, we'll go ahead and have everyone turn their cameras off. Jason, you can stay on since you are first. Thank you all for your intro. So Jason, we're gonna go ahead and get started. And as you all just heard, Jason is with Esri. And we're going to learn today how ArcGIS, along with the utility network, provides a foundation for digital transformation and the creation of digital twins. And that is the buzzword that we've all been hearing about. Jason, I'm going to go ahead and let you take it from here.
All right. Thank you, Cindy. All right. So this morning, I'm going to talk about network management with ArcGIS. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about really centers on the work that Esri's done to build what we call the utility network. So for those of you who maybe aren't familiar, the utility network is next generation enterprise technology along with some solutions and tools and an information model that Esri's created to help meet the evolving information needs of modern utilities. And so I want to dive in a little bit to that word right there, a modern utility. And what does a modern utility really look like? Well, modern utilities are fully integrated. They have information from multiple different business systems that they're pulling together and visualizing and analyzing through GIS. So Cityworks and Trimble customers have been doing this already for quite some time using ArcGIS and pulling together all of this information. Modern utilities manage very complex systems and networks. They remotely operate their devices and meters out in the distribution or in their treatment facilities, but they're all centrally controlled, and they have information models, and they have systems that are integrated to be able to do that. Modern utilities are operations focused. All utilities are operations focused, but they recognize the diverse opportunities for utilizing GIS within their business. And that includes asset management, as all of you are intimately familiar with, operations and planning, but also things like marketing and customer service. But becoming a modern utility presents a lot of challenges. This isn't an easy endeavor for utilities to take on. It involves real-world modeling, being able to accurately represent what's out in the built environment using their GIS. And that involves the creation of digital twins, bringing in hydraulic modeling, and really modeling and managing these complex assets. And that's where the utility network will come into play. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a few minutes. Another challenge for utilities is field to office collaboration. It's very difficult sometimes to get information out into the field, into the hands of the right people when they need it, and then also difficult sometimes to capture that information that they're collecting in the field and bring it back into the office and make it usable and expose it to the other people or groups within the organization that need to use it. It's also difficult sometimes to manage tasks, right? Keeping track of who's out in the field, what they're doing, where they're at, and who's accessible, as well as the connectivity of everything, managing the network in real time and being able to monitor that information. And this often requires multiple system integration, bringing all of that rich information together through things like work management, asset tracking, and IoT integrations. And as I mentioned before, I think Cityworks and Trimble customers are very well positioned to be able to do this with their systems and using ArcGIS as a foundation for doing that. So I want to talk about the utility network, and this is really a modern approach for managing network assets. So the utility network has evolved over the last couple of years. It was introduced at 10.6, and it's evolved in the last couple of years. But it enables organizations to be able to do much more advanced modeling or representation of their network itself, being able to go down to the smallest level of detail that the organization chooses to. It also enables much better visualization and embedded analytical capabilities for taking advantage of things like subnetworks and being able to visualize maps along with schematic views. And then probably most importantly is that it exposes this information and the capabilities out to the broader organization and provides that access to anybody who needs it where they need it. When I talk about modeling assets in greater detail, I'm talking specifically about the information model and the ability to be able to really drive down into the smallest level of detail. And so for utilities, this is distribution and collection and conveyance systems in water. And it means that they can identify devices that are actually controllers out in the system and being able to monitor and set up the flow of a resource through the pipes, or the ability for that resource to be able to go through the individual pipes. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a few minutes, as well as a connectivity model. So the connectivity model enables for a rule-based setup to be able to identify which pipes need to connect, where they need to connect, and how they need to connect, and really modeling the behavior of the network as it is out in the built environment. Part of this is also something that we call containment, and this provides the ability to set up devices and be able to get down into the smallest level of detail inside containers. An example of this might be something like a pump station in a water network. Previously, this would be represented as a point or a polygon on a map. Now we can actually go inside that pump station and model all of the inner workings and all of the detail that's inside of there, along with the assets. So this has a great implication for asset management and being able to now include those assets like the small fittings or the pumps and the motors that are inside of a pump station inside of asset management and inside of Cityworks. And so we support all of this through several different information models for all of the different utility sectors. So I work in the water sector, so these are the water examples, but we also have electric and gas and district heating and cooling available as well. The utility network also enables organizations to visualize data and answer much more sophisticated questions. So water examples look like maybe understanding water loss by defining district metered areas or DMAs. These are subsets of the network system to be able to identify the flow of water in and out compared to the consumption, and being able to understand if there's really water loss in a particular area. The utility network also provides the ability to look at these subnetworks by things like pressure zones and being able to summarize and understand the assets at that level compared to the whole system. The utility network also provides a framework for doing advanced analytical tracing and capabilities. So something like a valve isolation trace that would allow somebody to be able to understand which valves would need to be closed in order to isolate an area, maybe which hydrants would be out of service, and then ultimately which customers would be out of service as well. And really all of this lends itself to what we call coordinated operations. This is a big focus for Esri this year, as this is what organizations and utilities are really trying to achieve, is this bringing together information and being able to coordinate all of the activities and the operations. And this includes bringing in real-time information, operational data, as well as planning and design capability, being able to look at what did the network state look like previously, or what will it look like based on build-out. It also means dynamically capturing information in the field, being able to bring that information from the field to the office, and then likewise exchanging information from the office back out to the field. And all of this lends itself to increased field productivity by providing the right information and maps to the field crews and the groups out in the field when they need it to be able to make accurate and timely decisions. So I want to dive in a little bit to the anatomy of a utility network. And so if we look at, on the right-hand side, the enterprise geodatabase, this is really where the utility network lives. So the utility network lives inside an enterprise geodatabase, and this is what exposes out the database capabilities, the ability to edit and do versioning that we're used to against asset information. If we look at the middle here, it's really all built on ArcGIS Enterprise. So ArcGIS Enterprise is what enables that information from the database to be able to get out to users through desktop, web, and devices. We're all pretty familiar with the concept and the setup of WebGIS. But it's really the services on the left-hand side that make all of that possible. The utility network has feature service capability, meaning users can view, query, and edit the data from any device wherever they need to. But it also provides the utility service capability, which provides the topology, the understanding of how things connect, along with that geoprocessing framework for being able to do complex tracing, not only in desktop, but also out in the field using web browsers or mobile devices. It also enables the rule-based editing and helps us with data integrity. So an example of that is somebody collects some assets out in the field, you can have rules that might auto-generate the asset IDs for that particular set of assets without having to go in and manually set those up. The utility network also features a versioning service. So this is really new. This is a departure from the traditional versioning that you might be used to. It uses something called branch versioning, which is new, and it's all services based. And branch versioning allows for organizations to be able to roll back to any point in time and really understand what the network or what the data looked like at that point in time. And then lastly is network diagrams. This provides the ability for organizations to visualize not only their maps, but also schematic diagrams of the network and have that side by side and be able to work in one and see the updates in the other. So I want to quickly just look at the architecture for utility network inside of ArcGIS Enterprise. So it requires a base deployment of ArcGIS Enterprise. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. If you're not, it's a portal and the server and the data store and a couple of web adapters configured for access. But as I mentioned before, it also is built on using an enterprise geodatabase to serve out that information. And then it requires those services that I just talked about for the utility network. And we typically recommend that organizations stand this up on a separate but federated ArcGIS server. That way you can have some workload separation for your network activities versus serving out the rest of your maps and apps for your organization. All right, I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about some data management solutions. So to make deploying the utility network much easier for organizations, our solutions department has released what we call these data management solutions. And there are really two different types of data management solutions. One, which is the enterprise data management solution, and the other is a hosted data management solution. And so the enterprise data management solution, as the name implies, uses ArcGIS Enterprise and enterprise geodatabases. And so that means that these are deployed within an organization's own environment, whether that's on-prem or in the cloud infrastructure. But these leverage the utility network. So these have the network capabilities and allow organizations to deploy the utility network. Now, these are a bit more complex and they take longer to deploy, but they're also highly customizable. And this is what enables that versioning capability that I talked about. This also enables organizations to localize their schema. So if they're working in different languages, you can pull down the data model and actually localize that. And these are generally more appropriate for mid to large sized utilities. However, that said, we do have some really good examples of smaller utilities that have deployed the utility network with a lot of success. Now, on the right-hand side is the hosted data management solutions. So the utility network may not be the perfect fit for all organizations, or they may not be ready to deploy a utility network. So we've released these data management solutions that can be used inside ArcGIS Online. And these are designed to be a fast start for small organizations. They take only a couple of minutes to deploy, and they're deployed in ArcGIS Online. So the distinction here is that these are simple features only, and that they do not have any network capabilities. They also don't have any versioning capabilities because that's not enabled in ArcGIS Online. They do, however, include ArcGIS Pro projects for doing more precision type edits. So you can take advantage of map topology and snapping inside of Pro to ensure that all of the network assets are actually physically connected. And that really positions organizations pretty well for moving from that model into the utility network model when they're ready. The schema for both is very similar, so it's designed to be a much easier lift to go from the hosted into the enterprise. So I just want to take a quick peek at what it looks like to deploy some of these solutions. So here, deploying the data management for ArcGIS Enterprise. Although it's ArcGIS Enterprise, it still requires that you have ArcGIS Online, at least for right now, for the initial deployment. So it uses the ArcGIS Solutions app inside of ArcGIS Online to be able to deploy the Pro project, which you can then download from online into your ArcGIS Pro and then deploy into ArcGIS Enterprise. So I know that's a little bit confusing, but it does, for the time being, require both. From there, organizations will configure the asset packet. That's really the data model that makes a utility network, a water network, or a sewer network, or an electric or gas network. So the idea is that you configure the asset package. You'll probably need to extend the schema a little bit to match the schema that you have for your organization. Do some prototyping, make sure everything's good, and then load that into your ArcGIS Enterprise. Now you'll notice the arrow that says experience in single user environment. Earlier I said this requires ArcGIS Enterprise. The utility network does work inside of a file geodatabase. So for organizations with only one user or for prototyping, you can deploy the utility network in a file geodatabase. But once it's in ArcGIS Enterprise, then you can publish out those services that I talked about. And then part of the solution sets up the network editor inside ArcGIS Pro, which is a Pro project with a whole suite of templates for editing, as well as a web application for setting up viewing applications for other users within the organization. And then quickly, I want to just highlight deploying the data management for ArcGIS Online. So this deploys right in ArcGIS Online, again, using that ArcGIS Solutions app. There's a one step in there to set a spatial reference that you're going to work in, and then you deploy right to ArcGIS Online. So this deploys all of the data layers, the maps, and the groups, along with a whole suite of applications, which I show you here, all of the different apps. So the Pro Editing app, a web editor app, a viewing application, a dashboard. There's an app for managing map notes for making changes, as well as a couple of maps set up for ArcGIS field maps to be able to view or further collect assets. All right, so I know I threw a lot of information out there about the utility network. I wanted to just sort of explain a couple of the resources that are available. So Esri has professional services consulting. We can certainly help organizations to plan out their implementation. We can help with pilots or proof of concepts, as well as data migration workshops. And something that I really recommend is doing a data health check. That can help you understand what information might need to be changed, what errors might need to be corrected prior to moving into the utility network. We also have a whole suite of training. We've got instructor-led training courses specifically for the utility network, as well as self-paced web courses, learn tutorials in ArcGIS, white papers specific to the utility network, and then just a wealth of help documentation. And then lastly, and probably the most important, is Esri partners. We have a vast partner network that can help with a lot of those same consulting services that I talked about, but also offer solutions built on the utility network. And so with our partners, they can achieve what we call the utility network specialty. This is a special designation that lets you know that they've been vetted by Esri and that they really know and understand the utility network. And there's a couple of different types of designations. They can be a service provider, so they can help you with the configuration, migration, and implementation, or they can be a solution provider, or both. But solution providers provide focused applications built on the utility network. And those organizations can also achieve the specialty designation in a specific industry. So they can be specifically in electric, gas, water, or they can be a combination of any of those. All right, so just wanted to share out some resources. If you're interested in learning more about the utility network, we've got some webinars that we've recorded in the past. We have a white paper specific to helping water utilities get started, but it also applies to other industries as well. A couple of training pathways. ArcGIS blogs are a really, really good way to get up to speed on some of the information. And then a story map that can help you really understand the business value of implementing a utility network and moving into this, sort of digital transformation, into this digital world. So these resources are available in the handout that Cindy talked about. So you can click on the links in there and get access to all of these. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Cindy and hopefully answer a question or two.
Next up, we have Ellis Settler, and he is joining us from Brunswick, Glynn Joint Water Sewer, Georgia. It's kind of a mouthful there. We will learn how their 4-phase project has helped the organization realize more time to plan, less waste on employee resources, and reduce costs associated with emergency maintenance. So Ellis, if you're ready, I will let you take it from here.
All right. All right, welcome guys. I hope you're having a nice day. I just wanted to thank Cityworks for bringing me out and letting me present what we've been doing lately. And if you're ready, we're going to discuss our transformation to a quality asset management program with reliability optimization. So a little history for the joint water sewer. We are roughly servicing over 30,000 people, and we have all types of industry from, large industry to a very large port that does roll off for cars. We have 156 pump stations, and everything around here is flat. So we don't really have much elevation to work with, which has caused us to have more stations than I think you would in some places. We have 3 large treatment plants, as well as a handful of water facilities, wells, and things like that. The joint water sewer has been using Cityworks for a few years prior to our development now with our modern utility management system. And Cityworks was being used more as a digital logbook, a very expensive digital logbook for work orders. And we saw that data was lacking, the accountability was not there for follow through. And this was a point where the joint water sewer realized that it needed to devote resources and continued development and maintenance of the program. It also needed guidance from focused vendors who were specialized in developing effective utility maintenance and reliability optimization, and especially the CMMS portion, especially when we get to our hierarchies and things like that. In the early years, there was essentially no difference between us having a antiquated paper logbook and having a modern asset management program. So our starting goals, we wanted to make them simple. To get this underway and get it working effectively and quickly, we had to make everything simple. Just like any other program that wanted to start asset management, we wanted to make sure that we got out in front of projects and mitigate those critical failures rather than chasing around fires and doing small little fixes that were keeping things afloat, but not necessarily helping the asset run at a higher capacity and for longer periods of time. And our goal from that was to reduce labor cost, asset cost, and time spent reacting versus maintaining. The bottom line was we had to stop reacting and start maintaining. And that's kind of what we are, our mission motto is for this whole thing. We needed to perform quality maintenance versus easy fixes like timing down a flange bolt until it was 2 inches long and critically failed. We wanted to make sure that leaks were taken care of properly instead of just kind of throwing glue on it and seeing if it would work. There was a need to know the problems before they happened and where they might happen. Especially down here on the coast, we have a lot of issues with the salinity of the water. It causes a lot of problems with different materials, and knowing where those materials were or are would help us actually get to the point where we could maybe mitigate those or stop them from happening altogether. We also needed to improve the reliability of all of our assets so we didn't respond to the same problem over and over again. Now, to do this, we came up with a 4-phase approach to define our mission parameters. The first phase was to identify all assets, define the systems, define the subsystems, and get to the equipment. Our second phase was to develop the consequences and probability of failure and develop a true reliability-based optimization for all of those assets. The third phase was developing an engineered failure modes and effective cause analysis. And our fourth phase, which we're moving into now, is to define future protections of our assets. So with our phase one, we had to do a lot of work. This was probably the most time consuming of all four of the phases that we've gone through at this point. We had to identify what's what, and which required considerable amount of on-time site to develop all of this in a comprehensive inventory of all the assets at a particular site. I'll use the wastewater treatment plant for most of my references here, just because that is where we started off, and it was one of the larger, high dollar targets that we need to get done quickly. So if you look at the spreadsheet that is on the screen right now, that is what we started off with when developing our asset inventory. It was the department, the location, the system, subsystem, and so on. We had to make sure we had CMMS tags and all types of information that would be put into GIS and then transferred over when we got our new hierarchy for Cityworks. So developing a vertical hierarchy was absolutely vital to our mission objectives. We had to move away from the linear thought of everything's just a pipe. When you get into pump stations and you get into the wastewater treatment plants, there's a lot of moving parts, and you really had to go to a vertical asset management approach to get everything, especially when using a CMMS system. So we started off with gathering those general major assets into a schema to get the ball rolling, and then we continued to refine that process and get into deeper workflows like you see here. This is one for our pump stations, and while we may not be at the end of this, we're working deeper down into it to develop an even more comprehensive format for our hierarchy. And like I said, the vertical hierarchy was just the obvious direction to go, and we were pushed that way by everybody, and we had no complaints about it. I think it was the best decision we could have made. So phase two is where we really started to dig into all of the data collection that we had done. We started getting into the subsystems and the equipment and developing their criticality by averaging their consequence and the probability of failures. So on the screen right now, you can see kind of our path to getting everything into Cityworks. It has our 4 phases. 1 and 2 were kind of independent, and then you can see in 3, everything starts coming together. We had to make sure that things like our operator rounds were copacetic with what they were actually doing, that the PM tasks were actually scheduled and working properly and getting what we needed done to the actual assets. And then we took all that information, put it into GIS, and transferred it into Cityworks. So after we figured out all that fun stuff and got all that data collected, we had to do more data. So for our PMs, our CMs, and our OMs, we had to come up with a way to set all that up. We averaged the consequence and probability of failure and developed a starting point to see which assets needed attention the most. and it provided us with a good jumping off point to develop our maintenance standards. We started off with, like everybody should, referencing the O&M manuals and getting a minimum standard for what should be done for these particular assets. And while we dug through that probability and consequences of failure, we were able to fine-tune the frequencies for particular assets, and it also provided us with a template for our reliability-based optimization. After creating the PMCMs and OMs, we went to that FEMCA, or the failure modes of effective analysis. And the benefit of having a FEMCA matrix is it helps streamline the repairs, but it can also help you recognize trends that are going on, and you can go into further investigations in certain areas or certain assets or types of assets that you have. So it helps you dig deeper into all of that, and when you may need to focus a little more of your time, capital, and effort. So now we have to utilize all that data. Once we got everything into our GIS system, we had to push it out to our Cityworks, to our CMMS system in Cityworks. So phase 3 was a culmination of all those collection efforts and the analysis and develop standards. So at this point, it was time to put everything from GIS into Cityworks and actually get this thing rolling. So with the help of our contractors and specialists, we implemented the new hierarchy and training staff in the new direction, which was one of the biggest parts of getting Cityworks to work as well as we wanted it to. After the hierarchy and work orders were given their frequencies and requirements based on the RVO, we started moving forward. All the effort that we put forward, you can see here. This is just a simple work order that we brought up for this in particular. Our goal, like I said earlier, was to keep everything simple. So we made sure that we set the recurrence dates and everything like that so that it would be taken care of for the future. We also went in and took the extra steps of adding things like instructions. If you use the instruction section in Cityworks, that's awesome on you because they're really good. We really like using them just because it helped out with the new process. Everybody could dig in, see what they were supposed to be doing, and make sure they actually followed step by steps. We use these rather than tasks to begin with, just to get people used to the system. But it's also great for people that are new to Cityworks, people that are covering shifts that may not be on that particular route on a regular basis, and for new hires. So the other big part of this was making sure that all of those tables and all of our GIS were pointed in the right direction. Making sure that the related tables and assets are set properly was paramount to getting out the good data that we need for our metrics. And that data is what drives your RVO and its adjustments. So almost 2 years in now to this big push that we started back in, back before the pandemic. We've had some pretty good results. Using Respond, I've put together these simple reference dashboards for our commissioners, superintendents, supervisors, crew chiefs, and so on, so they can get a quick peek at what we're doing and what's being done out in the field. They can see what we're doing as far as preventative work, planned work, etc. We made that transition from being a reactive organization in about mid-2020, despite the pandemic. And we are continuing to trend upwards. Our goal is to reach 80% in both categories, planned and preventative. I think that's pretty much a baseline for most utilities that have an asset management program. And we're well on our way. The last push there is going to be getting our planning and scheduling put together and the asset protections for the future. So phase 4, which we're moving into soon, will be asset protections for the future. So the next step is going to be implementing our planning and scheduling and training all of our divisions on the process. At this point, getting that started is going to be critical for us to get our 80% goals. We've kind of flattened out here around the 70% mark, just over 70%. And that last push to reach our goal will be getting planning and scheduling done. And Cityworks has been instrumental in getting us to the point we are right now by making sure that work orders are created and assigned promptly and easily. Implementing the RVO task report is going to be another step that we go through. It will actually help us, maintain our assets to a higher degree and to a higher standard than just the normal PMCMs and OM standards. So we'll be able to run reports, see what's happened, and redirect our process to better address the issues that are at hand. On the screen right now, you can kind of see one of our condition-based maintenance matrices, or matrices. This just gives you an idea of when something should happen, how long it should take, how much labor should be put towards it, and what you're supposed to do. And that's going to make sure that everything's done exactly the same every time that we do it. And in the smaller window there, we're going to utilize Projects 365 to begin with our planning and scheduling. Right now, it's just what fits for us. But every organization is going to have a different need or different ability that they may be able to use a different type of program. Our goal here is to use 365 to show the validity of the planning and scheduling so that we can get a standalone program that hopefully will work with Cityworks. So, yeah, with all that, I'd like to thank you for joining us today.
Next up, we have co-presenters, Heather Simoncini and Jessica Rogers, and they are from the city of Tallahassee, Florida. And today we will learn how Cityworks PLL has become the backbone of their permitting process. In this presentation, you'll see how it allowed the city to integrate other solutions, making a 100% electronic permitting process possible. And they will also be taking us into our fast break. And so Heather and Jessica, if you are ready. Jessica, Heather, I'm going to do a quick sound check with you because when we did the intro, we were having trouble hearing you. So.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
It sounds okay. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys for having us. The city of Tallahassee is a very unique place to live. We're known for our lush landscapes, trees, our rolling hills, our outdoor parks and trails. We're also about 30 minutes away from Georgia and less than an hour away from the Gulf of Mexico beaches. We're, of course, the capital city, but we're also the 9th largest city with a population just shy of 200,000 and with a growth rate of 9% in the last decade. We have 6 colleges and universities. We're happy to say that many of the students that choose to learn here also choose to stay after graduation. We own our own utilities and our own international airport. And at the City of Tallahassee Growth Management Department, the department responsible for reviewing land, environmental, and building developments, our goal is to act more as facilitators of growth rather than regulators. We strive to provide excellent customer service and encourage growth in new industry at every turn. Right now, I'm going to share with you a little bit of our journey to achieving a 100% electronic review process for all of our growth management reviews and how PLL was the bridge we needed to make it all work. We actually started out with our first electronic plan review using a plan review software called Project Docs, which we implemented along with a homegrown permitting portal in April of 2009. We started off with several of our land reviews, like a site plan and subdivision, and then over the years that grew to include more review types and ultimately ended with our commercial building reviews. Over the years, we grew to include more review types, ultimately ending with our commercial building reviews. But at this point, we only had about half of our reviews electronic. We were making progress, but we weren't where we wanted to be at 100% electronic plan review. Our old permitting database was holding us back because of its age and the fact that it wasn't web-based. Ultimately, we reached the point where we realized that we had to replace our permitting database since it was preventing us from fully integrating with other solutions. After lots of demos and research on our hunt for replacement, we ended up picking Cityworks Enterprise solution of PLL and AMS. We also worked with Timmons Group to create a new custom customer portal for our PLL database. One of the best parts of PLL is that we were able to do much of the development ourselves, so things moved quickly on such a large project. At that time, we were still using project docs for plan review, so we were able to integrate that along with our payment system and our utility customer database called GIS, and also our IVRS phone system for inspection scheduling. Most recently, we also chose to change our plan review software to OnBase Plan Review, since we already used OnBase as the city's archive. Because PLL has workflow, we were in our old permitting software did not. We were able to leverage this to the point where we could use a single plan review workflow in OnBase for all of our reviews. This meant that we were finally able to achieve a 100% electronic review for every review that we do, from a pre-site plan to construction of a new hospital wing. Applicants can now apply online, get review comments, get markups, get approval documents, schedule inspections, pay fees, all from one place, our customer portal. The documentation they upload is being uploaded directly into OnBase, where it lives moving forward. Staff no longer needs to scan or import files into our archive because the files are being uploaded directly by the customers. All of this would not have been possible without a backbone of PLL. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica, and Jessica is going to give you a little bit of background about what we've been able to do with AMS.
There we go. Thank you, Heather. So our AMS environment is set up a little bit different. Heather, I'm not sure if you moved the slide forward or not. You can go ahead. There it goes. So right now we have a bunch of different divisions and departments using Cityworks right now, such as airports. They use it. The airport uses it for equipment inspections. A lot of our utilities operations are using it. You can see gas and electric is on the list. And also traffic, parks and rec, street operations. Our facility management uses it for HVAC inspections and other kinds of building maintenance, which is kind of neat to me. Some of the implementations we have in progress is for solid waste. We've already done residential services. We also do our own solid waste pickup, and we partner with waste management for that. And so right now we're looking to find some best practices on how to implement our solid waste commercial services, commercial pickups right now. And also utility customer service to help since we have 3 universities here, when students move in and move out, it streamlines some of those workflows is what we're working on as well. And then next I'll talk about some of the implementations we have. So we have Digitally, which is our mobile app for citizen reporting. This is based off of Acela and Public Stuff right now. And we've got our, as Heather mentioned, PeopleSoft, which is our customer information system, Project Docs and OnBase for electronic document management systems. And then we used Responder by Schneider Electric for our outage management system. And these are all different integrations we have implemented either with PLL and AMS or with both. One of the kind of quirky things about the city of Tallahassee is we decided to install each implementation for each different division separately. And so one of the things we're looking to do right now is kind of bring all of our different I think we have 9 instances, 13 different divisions using it into one big implementation of it, and then really focus on using the domains better and focus on being able to transfer work orders through to other departments better than the way that we're being able to handle it now. And that's pretty much how we're set up for Cityworks AMS right now. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Jessica. We're going to take another look at PLL. So I think that everybody can probably all agree that 2020 was a difficult year for business. Most businesses had to have some level of change so that they could continue to support their customers. Since we already had in our toolbox the ability to accept applications online, payments, and documents, we didn't have any stalls in business or the growth of our city when we had to close our doors to the public and transition to working remotely. Because we were able to continue reviewing during this time of great change for our development community, meant that we were there to support them when they needed us the most. As you can see from the graph of our FY 2019 and FY 2020, we did see a slight reduction in the number of permits, but business was extremely steady during 2020. We did see a shift in what was being reviewed from less commercial reviews and more residential due to the recent housing and renovation booms that most people are seeing right now. Okay. So what's next for us? Right now, we're working on a replacement of our utility customer database, which will leverage GIS and PLL. We're also working hard on the integration of PLL and AMS that Jessica mentioned. But when all of these integrations are in place, we'll be able to do things like create new utility account addresses when a new home or business is permitted, create service work orders when someone chooses to add gas on their existing home, let utilities know that key GM inspections have passed, so it's safe to turn on utilities, just to name a few. On a side note, one of the best benefits that I've noticed by far with PLL has been the ability to report and capture metrics. It has finally allowed us to track our overall review performance and see where improvements needed to be made. And right now, we're so proud of our numbers and the work that we've been able to do to improve our performance, that one of our next goals is to create reporting dashboards where our citizens can actually see this good work that we've done. Cityworks PLL has been our bridge to finally be able to achieve our goal of a 100% electronic review process. Through the use of its APIs, workflow, and its innate ability to be customized, we've had no major roadblocks in our journey since we made the switch. It has allowed us to mesh all of our solutions and provide a well-rounded customer experience.
So next up, we have co-presenters, Ellie Macklin and John Taylor. And I will invite them in as they get ready here. They are going to describe the project processes, final design, and current system state, including integrations with CMS and billing. And they are from Jackson Energy Authority, also known as JEA. I hope that's okay that we can abbreviate that, in Jackson, Tennessee. So Ellie and John, if you are ready, I will go ahead and let you take it from here.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. Well, good morning or afternoon, everybody, depending on what part of the country you're in or what part of the world you're in. Maybe good evening. My name is John, and I'm with Jackson Energy Authority. I'm the GIS person that I typically deal with GIS here, and that is not a lightweight place to be. My title is business analyst, and we're just here to talk to you quickly about what we're doing with Cityworks for electric processes. A quick little background: Jackson Energy Authority is a multi-utility. If it is a utility that can be sold or marketed, we deal with it, and that includes fiber to the home. It includes water, wastewater, gas, electric, propane, everything. And you may be wondering, where is Jackson, Tennessee? Well, we're about halfway between Memphis and Nashville in the western end of Tennessee. So if we take a left out of town, we might end up in blues country in Memphis. If we take a right, we might end up in Nashville. So we route about 33,000 customers per utility. And since we're a multi-utility, when we have to count things by the meter point, we're roughly around 120 to 135,000 meters, depending on how you count things. So that's a little background on JEA. Now, why did we want to do a electric pilot, and why now? Well, just a little background on that. Our electric division had been, of course, working along quite happily through the history of JEA up on into the 2000s, and we had some green screen applications. We had some billing applications. We had bills of material. We had lots of things that were out there available for them, and they, of course, used them and made great use of them. But the technology was changing, and it was a little bit difficult for them to track what was going on out in the truck. We were to a point where they had plenty of work to do and a difficult way of accounting for it, if you will. We had originally brought in Cityworks for our water and wastewater divisions through a larger project that was going on for that. And as that product was rolled out, the other utilities began to take notice. Our gas division had some outstanding inspections that they really wanted to kind of streamline and maneuver into a better packaging for themselves. And so they took advantage of that. And it just kind of turned into more of a peer pressure kind of situation. I guess maybe electric kind of felt like, hey, these other guys are getting away with something. So not really. We really planned it that way. So electric division's workload came along and was pretty evident that it was time to start moving some of their processes into it. We started that. I think electric was 2018. They started to get into that. So as we got into the project, we started to pilot it and talk about what were we going to do to help electric. What were we going to do to bring their system along? And it was pretty evident that we have plenty of complexity going on in our environment here. First off, as a multi-utility, I can speak firsthand towards this, towards the difficulty that we have. We are an ArcGIS customer as well, so City of Tallahassee responder. Yeah, we got that. We run a SQL database. We're also a Microsoft shop, so we've standardized on Microsoft products. We have SQL Server, currently running about SQL Server 2014, with the caveat there, a little asterisk above the database list item. We are running our SQL Server 2014 database in 2012 compatibility mode. So we've got some older stuff running right now. We are using ArcGIS 10.2 for a desktop, and our server environment is 10.5.1. We will be upgrading very soon, and once that upgrade has happened, we're going to be on a little bit more current database platform and an ArcGIS desktop platform. We'll be moving server to 10.7.1, and we could have gone a little bit further with this upgrade that's coming up. However, we did not want to get into an upgrade of Cityworks. So because we're at Cityworks 15.4.4, we felt like that was far enough to move our GIS environment up. Once we are stable and upgraded, then of course exciting stuff happens and we start to look at another project, upgrading Cityworks and GIS again. So anyway, by way of complexity, that's kind of what our architecture looks like. This is just another view of some of the complexity that we've got. This is just our electric, in our catalog, our electric data set with some of the object classes that we've got riding above that. It's just complex out there, you know, that's just the way it was. So as we knew all of those complexities were there and we were entering into our conversations with the electric division leadership and field guys, the one predominant thing that came out of these meetings was, you know, make it super easy. So at least they said please, and we heard them loud and clear. We wanted to make this something that, from a pilot perspective, we were able to really show them that they could do this. And part of the complexity that they saw was from the water and wastewater and gas patch. So they didn't want to jump off onto that. This is just kind of a descriptor for you to see that you can make some small things happen in Cityworks. It doesn't have to be huge. And this is kind of showing a one single feature class that we were publishing out for our initial pilot service. And we just split it out, this one single feature class, based on whether it was an active or an inactive light. So we pushed that out there for the guys to see in Cityworks. Of course, here's a description of the REST endpoint on our GIS server. And ultimately, the map on the right-hand side is a little bit more complex just because we've rolled extra things out there by now. And that's a more current image showing our environment as it is. So we started with the pilot of our security lights. It was a project that was going to be mainly worked by night crews. And our team was ready to go with this pilot project. And kudos to all the team members out there that aren't named John Taylor anyway, because they were willing to go out there and help at night. They were willing to take the calls. They were available. They made themselves available, and ultimately, the team was very successful for this project. They really listened to their customer, and even if it was through a string and a tin can, they were able to roll out something that our electric crews found simple and available to them and accessible to them. So with that, I will hand it off to my partner here, Ellie, and let her show you a little bit more about what we've done with electric, even beyond that pilot.
Thanks, John. So I'd really like to take you guys through a little bit of the project design that led us through the pilot implementation and then into the larger electric rollout. So first of all, JA has been around for 60 years this past year. So legacy systems are definitely something that we deal with every day. We knew from the beginning that if we were going to have Cityworks work within the electric division, we had to build into what they were already using and hopefully build out from there and improve some processes for them. But if it didn't work from the beginning, this would be a project that did not succeed. So let's take a look first at just the project design. On the right-hand side here, you'll see service requests and work orders that related to the pilot project specifically. We started with outdoor lighting. We had originally thought that we might choose a process that did not involve integration with some of our other systems, with our CIS or with our billing division. But this was a place that the electric folks knew needed improvement and needed a better method of record keeping. And so at the end of the day, this was what the division opted to use as our pilot. So that early design involved a great deal of stakeholder engagement. So we worked with everyone from the upper level administrators and decision makers in the electric division down to the guy and the gal in the truck that would be using the Cityworks interface on a tablet after dark. We actually did several ride-alongs to better understand the process. And once we understood the information that they wanted to maintain, we built out a prototype and then took it back to them. And we didn't just take it into a conference room. We actually set up a few test tablets and took them out in the field with the guys. And the first time around, I was the one using the tablet and following along parallel to their processes. We altered a few things and then we went back again and began training a couple crew members that we knew were open to the idea. After that first round of testing, we made a few changes, and what we took back to them to begin training on was something that they had had input on and felt ownership of. From there, we did formal training and moved into the production environment, we allowed them use of the system, both field crews and the office staff, over a weekend to get used to working within this environment. And then at the end of that time period, we wiped the test orders from the system and pushed to a formal go live. And at that point, we were on call for IT support calls. And we had a fair number of them probably in the first week. You know, we'd get the call from the truck at midnight or 1 a.m. But we saw those drop drastically almost to zero within the first week. And that was just that original, adjustment period. And once folks understood where things were in the app, where to find their work, how to pass their work on to the next individual in the process, we saw them drop to nothing. And every once in a while, we'll have an issue with, it's more likely to be an issue with the iPad than with Cityworks when we have somebody call in now. So there's always this dance between simplicity and visibility. You want things to be simple for the end user, but everybody has to be able to see everything they need to see. So everything that's assigned to them, but in a way that's not cluttered, in a way that makes sense. It's important to find your loose ends early. And for us, that was in billing and reporting. So what we really needed to do to be successful was to improve work tracking and record keeping for the electric division, for that internal process. And then we had to provide the same visibility for billing and our individual users who used our customer information system and our financial information system. So these are folks that may not have access to Cityworks. For example, our CSRs, we didn't want to train on a new system. They have a system that works well for them. They're able to report their work and move on. So what we've set up instead is an integration between our CIS and Cityworks. So when those service orders in the CIS come in, they automatically create through that service request API the related service request in Cityworks. And then the final piece is really to better use and improve our GIS asset information, and with that, our asset tracking. So take a look at this inspection on the right. This is a light installation and removal, and this was really the core of the pilot project. In these ride-alongs, we found that this information was being reported on the back of a piece of paper. Some guys were using OneNote, but what they needed was a way to report what light was removed and where it was replaced. That had to go back to the storeroom, but it was not reported in our CIS. It's not large enough to be an asset. So it's an assembly or a bill of material, and this is what was falling through the cracks. It's also important because of that warranty information at the bottom. If we're still in warranty, then that's something that needs to be reported to billing. If we're out of warranty, that's something we're responsible for ourselves. So again, the active lights were a large part of our original pilot rollout, and we only had really 3 work order types here. We had outdoor lighting work orders that could be created as a child of that original service request, and then we had 2 types related to GIS changes. One was a map change if something needed to be moved on the map. So for example, we had an instance early on where we were standing in the field in front of a light pole that was not reported on the map. So this allows our GIS drafter to understand that an edit needs to be made and get the information that she needs. So rather than waiting until we had a perfect system, we're actually using Cityworks to help improve our GIS asset management so that in the future we'll be able to report on more types of work and track particular asset classes better. So you'll note that this is actually a gas valve. This is the process that John was referencing that was part of the reason electric became more interested in Cityworks as a whole. And what we're able to do here is show the work in space. So this helps the guys know what's left to do and when it's required to be done. Hang on. I'd like to back up one. There we go. So this is a little more of what the system looks like as of today. We're now managing our meter changeouts. These are our repeated processes. All of our distribution service request types are now in Cityworks. And right-of-way clearing has been a big success. They're able to see and understand when the work needs to be done. Some of this is cyclical or repetitive work, and this helps them track the window in which it needs to be done. So again, nothing slips through the cracks. In other cases, these will be individual types of work that need to be triggered when somebody goes out into the field, conducts an inspection, and determines that there's a problem that needs to be fixed. So we've built these out over time, and each of them maps to service request types or work orders that are applicable either to our CIS or to other internal electric processes. And we've got just a partial sample of our admin dashboard, which is just an inbox inside Cityworks that allows them to see what's been recently done, what's still out there to do, and then again, just to make sure nothing falls through the cracks, we have lists, larger lists of all open order types and what's been recently closed. We'll be talking more about that at Innovate in June. If anybody wants to dig a little deeper, that will be the time. So just for a few quick takeaways, we've seen a 70% reduction in paper. And along with that, we know that we're better tracking information on things like bulbs and light, these smaller pieces of equipment. We know we have a larger savings in truck rolls and mileage. We estimate about $81K annually, and that's just from extra rolls to reread meters, or cases where the guys are coming back into the office multiple times a day to pick up fresh work from the printer. We also have a significant reduction in administration, and they're estimating 4 to 6 weeks of work per year for 2 or even more individuals just tracking this work, maintaining information, and reporting on it. And I had several people say to me, this is from the head of electric all the way down to the office managers, that it's really difficult to know what you don't know. We are aware that we're doing better. We know that we're collecting, storing, and retrieving information better than we have been in the past. But it can be difficult to put a number on fixing the problems that we don't know we're missing. It's always important to push the edges of your design. And this is one of our biggest lessons learned. Every time we thought we knew where the start and end points were, the goalposts would move a little bit. So for example, we had to be able to build into the CIS, and we had to ensure visibility for billing on the back end. And it's been important for us to design outward from the GIS record wherever possible. And where we don't have complete information, to use Cityworks to improve that information for future processes. Really, at the end of the day, in order to be successful, it does come down to listening. So when you start with a solid design, you're asking questions and you're listening to how the work is done. This allows you to identify problems and pain points. From there, we can build solutions that work with and build on the processes that are out there now. For us, we found that that's really how you can drive user adoption, and that's how you can measure success.
Up next, we have Eric Myers, and Eric is going to share the journey of updating over 6,000 curb ramps and how they manage this process through Cityworks Office for AMS and Cityworks mobile apps. They have also been exploring the benefits of an Esri operation dashboard for quick insight and reporting. Eric is from Beaverton, Oregon, and we will go ahead and give the time to you, Eric.
All right, thank you. Let me get this set up. All right, hopefully you can see my screen. We're good to go. So as she had mentioned, my name is Eric Myers, and my presentation here is going to be on using asset management to effectively assess, monitor, and improve ADA curb ramps at the city of Beaverton. So before I begin, I just want to do a little overview here, going into the history of the program, how the city of Beaverton, basically went through with this ADA transition plan from the federal government and how we now monitor ADA curb ramps to the city, and then go into the Cityworks and the GIS backend process for actually designing that infrastructure and monitoring the process, and how Cityworks has been helpful in streamlining that for everyone and adding transparency. Then just do a quick discussion on budget pre and post COVID. Just kind of interesting to make mention that, as pretty much every organization has experienced, there's been a change in funding from street sources from the gas tax. And so that's kind of affected our ability to do curb ramps and changed how we're moving forward. And then I hope that based upon that, we can utilize Esri Operations Dashboard to provide insight quickly and easily to upper management and to understand where we're going and how different changes to the budget can affect that. So first, a little history. The ADA transition plan established by the city of Beaverton originally in 1995, and that's the Americans with Disabilities Act passed down from the federal government. It covers more than just ADA curb ramps, obviously. It also covers facilities, sidewalks, but I'm going to be focusing solely here on ADA curb ramps. And one thing I wanted to mention from 1995 till 2018 that's listed here, in 2016, there was a settlement between Oregon Department of Transportation and then the Association of Oregon Centers for Independent Living and Disability Rights Oregon. And what was discovered in that is that the state wasn't meeting its mandate passed down from the federal government. And so as a result, that settlement occurred in that lawsuit. And then it kind of jump-started local municipalities and counties to assess their ADA curb ramp inventories to make sure that the entire state was moving forward appropriately. And at that time, we did a quick assessment on our curb ramps, and we had about 5,700 curb ramps at the time. And out of the 15% we assessed, we were seeing about 1/3 of them were not in compliance. So at that point, we realized that we also had a problem and that we needed to rectify the issue. So in 2018, the city conducted an internal self-evaluation of all of its programs and services, including the ADA curb ramp. And one of the results of that was to develop this new title for ADA program coordinator within the street division that would oversee the ADA curb ramp project specifically. I just wanted to mention a quick little comment here is that estimates show 1 in 7 adults in the United States have a mobility-related disability, and that comes from the CDC. So that shows how important this work actually is to the entire community as a whole. So what we decided to do in order to design the back end using Cityworks Asset Management is we took the image that's there on the right, which is the ODOT inspection form that they use during the interviewing process. I'm not talking about the interviewing process, the actual training process. And we took that and then designed our GIS schema with those different fields in mind. And we wanted to do this to have a quantitative data model approach so that if the metrics that determine whether or not a curb ramp passed or failed changes, we wouldn't have to reassess the ramp. We already had that data ready to go, and then we can just slide the scale accordingly. And so it made it really easy for us to just seamlessly create our GIS data schema and build our Cityworks Asset Management business process off of this form that all of the municipalities were already going to use from their training. And so I have a quick video here that I'm going to show, but before I do that, I just wanted to do a quick overview of our Cityworks business process that we have is, our ADA program coordinator would go ahead and create an upgrade to ADA work order. In that work order, he would attach and pre-create the assets and inspections, and then they would use Cityworks Mobile to go out in the field and inspect the data, take pictures and whatnot, and complete it. Now, you can't close an inspection out in the field. You can only complete it, and so then you would have to then go back into Cityworks office at the end of the day and review and close down that work order, which is then the trigger point within Cityworks to write directly to the GIS. And after that is done, then you do the normal, ELM and closing down your work order. But this video here is going to show kind of what we did and how we did it.
All right, so what I wanted to do here is to show on the left-hand side what the Cityworks inbox would look like for our ADA program coordinator, Chris. And so this is just a tab that I created that just shows some work orders that are currently open. This work order, upgrade to ADA 36776, is the one that we're currently working on. And I'm going to flip over to it right now. It's a work order that has spanned multiple years. It's based on the contract, and there's 223 assets within that work order. And each asset has an inspection, which most of them are completed. I'm going to open up a open inspection here just to kind of show that our template mirrors our GIS schema, to just prove that this is why we set it up this way, so that when a value is written into one of these fields, it'll write directly into the GIS with the appropriate information. And so what happens is when that occurs, our ramps change colors. So if you see over here on the right on the map side, we have different colors throughout the city. All the ramps start at pending if they don't have an inspection. And then as that inspection is completed, they'll jump to yellow, orange, or green. And that's depending on whether or not they meet compliance. Red ramps, however, will be a ramp that isn't yet installed at that corner that needs to be installed. And so in that situation, the ramp wouldn't, it wouldn't be blue, it would just go straight to green if it was compliant or not. But just to quickly show, I'm just going to grab a couple of these ramps here to open up the data table. But as you can see, the data that's being captured in the inspection is written directly to the GIS, which then influences the colors of the system. Now, what I'm gonna do here is open my Cityworks Mobile. And so there was that one inspection that was pending. And here they are. Sorry about that. So as you can see, there's the inspections right here for the ramps, and the user can just go in. I mean, if they can geolocate themselves, if they're at the property, it'll bring them right to it in the mobile app. And then within Cityworks Mobile, this is the inspection. They can fill in all the observations, you know, as I showed, the function condition, ramp style, ramp run one, the running slope, cross slope. They enter in all that information. They can also attach photos here that will be attached to the inspection. A lot of inspectors like to do that so that they have reference. And then once they're done, they just go ahead and mark it complete and sync it. And then what's going to happen is it's going to remove that inspection from mobile. You see that point's gone. And then when Chris goes ahead and logs in, if he's the one that did the inspection, there's a couple different groups, but if it's his group, then he'll go in and he will see that inspection here completed and needing to be reviewed and closed down. And there you can see it right there. And so how Cityworks works is when you close an inspection, if you have it set up, it'll write directly to the GIS. So closing the inspection down would then write to the GIS, which then would instantly change its color if it was compliant from blue to green. And then that's a way that we can quickly know and see our progress for the ADA curb ramp project.
All right. So thanks for bearing with me for that. I think it would have been easier to show the video than to try to do it live. There might be some issues that would occur. So what I wanted to do then is to go into talking about the different groups that utilize the ADA curb ramp inspection and process at the City of Beaverton. So there are 3 different groups that could do an ADA curb ramp. Large majority of them are done by the operations division with the overlays, but there are also times where a CIP project can occur that has an ADA curb ramp, and that would be from the engineering group, or new construction, and that can come from site development. And so what we wanted to do here is we wanted to create one solution for everyone, but because there's different processes involved, then we needed to keep certain aspects of the process separate. So everyone uses the same inspection template form, which then flows into GIS, but we wanted to make it so that the work orders, the actual work management wasn't conflicting and getting mixed across, since the City of Beaverton only has one domain for our asset management system. We don't have multiple domains for this type of work. So we kept different templates while keeping the same inspection. And then we also used the operations group, which does 95% of the overlays, to drive what we wanted the inspection to look like and feel. And so we had some pushback a little bit and some questions from some of the other groups, but because 95% of all the inspections done by the overlay group, we set up a process, try to facilitate and come and find common ground so that we could all use the same solution and get to the same end goal. So just to talk a little bit about the budget, as I mentioned earlier, this table here shows what our budget was pre-COVID, right? So we were planning out 5 years to go ahead and do curb ramps with a $1.5 million budget every year. At the time, we have about 6,000 ramps, so about 200 a year. Over 30 years, the project takes about 30 years, right, to get it done. However, things have changed now, and so we're kind of in a state of flux at the moment. We are now in a situation where we've lost approximately about 35% of our budget for the 88 curb ramp program. That may change as revenues continue to increase for gas taxes. If not, then we need to determine, maybe we need to adjust how long the program will take to complete. Do we need to bring in funds from elsewhere, like the general fund or whatever you may have? But it's just kind of, because of COVID, it's kind of created this situation where it'd be good for us to be able to better monitor what's going on and present those different issues to upper management. And so that's what kind of led us to possibly do this type of dashboard. And so we're in 2 phases. Right now, phase 1 is complete. Phase 1 is essentially showing the status of the curb ramps and what has and hasn't been done, seasonality, our goals, targets, different groups. Phase 2, which I'm hoping to get for the Innovate conference, would tie in some curb ramp costs and then the budgets. But before I dive into that, I just wanted to click through here. The image here is embedded into the Cityworks dashboard, but I felt it would probably be easier to bring it up in the actual web browser. And so this is an easy, quick way for our program coordinator to go ahead and make the case that certain areas, need work being done. This is our progress, where we are, how many have been compliant, how many we have exception needed, how many we still need to inspect, and then our breakdown by fiscal year for the different groups. And so we can see for the current fiscal year, we don't really have any ramps in the system yet for the site development, the new construction group, but we need to assess and see if maybe there's some that are pending and missing. So by doing this, this is an easy way to be able to see what's going on, where deficiencies may lie, where we may be missing data. And then our goal at this point was 200 ramps, but that was pre-COVID, so that number may drop down. I think on the other table I had it at 180, but maybe it might need to be 150 now, depending on the budget. And then it's also good just to kind of show a trend line. We're very seasonal here. We're not, it rains a lot during the winter. And so I don't know if that's the greatest time to be doing pouring of concrete. So we do a lot of work during summer around that time. So it's just kind of good to see this. And then hopefully in the future, I'd like to not only include costs, but make it so that when you zoom in and out, you can dynamically change these different fields. So I think that'll be very valuable. So one more thing to mention is that phase 2, right? We have a new template that we've designed that is for the bid items. It shows every single bid item for the curb ramps, and then we will allow the ADA program coordinator to enter in those for the different curb ramps so that we can see the exact cost of the curb ramp, and then we can roll it up to the project. And then we could use those to possibly project out our budget, see if we're above or below our targets on the annual. We can dynamically forecast how long the program will take. Are we going to meet that? Do we need to move money over? All those opportunities present themselves once we start getting the actual hard numbers in, and then we can also compare it to the ELM that's going to be in the work orders. And so that's going to be an exciting time, is to integrate that into the dashboard. And I mentioned we're going to be presenting at Cityworks Innovate in a couple of months. I'll be joined with 2 other colleagues, Chris, our program coordinator, and Maurice, who does the GIS, and they will dive in further on all 3 aspects: the history, the background, of how we structured it and got the different groups integrated, and then the Esri operations dashboard. And hopefully by then we'll have the phase 2 dashboard ready to go and present. But that's pretty much all I have for today. So thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Eric, for that presentation. I think it's interesting to see that pre and post COVID that you've got there. Pretty interesting. And hi, Becky. Thanks for joining us. So Becky is going to wrap things up for us today, and she's going to be sharing the Cityworks product roadmap. She'll be covering the research and development pipeline and release pipeline, as well as those things that have just been released. So what's in development, what's coming soon, and a sneak peek into the future. So Becky, I'm going to go ahead and let you take it from here.
Great. Thank you, Cindy, and thank you everybody for joining today. I want to say, Eric, that was a beautiful dashboard that you had displayed there at the end. And I can just tell you that in the back channels, there's some Cityworks staff that are watching your presentation, and they're talking about ways that they would love to start to apply some of the upcoming functionality to what you showed. So just a heads up, in case a few people start hitting you up for conversations and discussion along those lines, just be ready. That's what happens when you show a great project. So as Cindy said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be following through the Cityworks product roadmap. I do need to go ahead and just make a statement, just general disclaimer at the beginning. Everything you see here is subject to change. These are intended as general outlines of the product direction, and none of the information that is shared here today can be used for any kind of commitment for delivery of that functionality and should not be relied upon in making any purchasing decisions. So with that out of the way, thank you, and we'll go ahead and proceed. So many of you have seen this presentation before, like this format at least of what we're discussing. And so there is the functionality that was in the latest release of Cityworks 15.6 and Respond 3.2 that went out recently as well. And so there's some of that functionality that I really recommend, folks start to dive into and take a look at. There's been a lot of really positive feedback we've had from clients who are going through and using some of that functionality, such as the barcode lookups and the way that's easing the facility of some of those field crews to start to access some of that information while they're out in plants and facilities, being able to scan a barcode and being able to pull up asset information and view previous work history as well. But I really want to start to dive in here in terms of what's coming. And I am going to also just make the plug, for a lot of this, I can't get into all the detail today for every item that you see here. And even in terms of the upcoming roadmap, I do need to keep it kind of brief just for the purposes of Converge and keeping to the schedule. But with that in mind, there's going to be a lot of opportunities at the Innovate Conference to start to dive into more detail around a lot of these areas, and also set up conversations with some of the SMEs, product managers, talking with some of the other staff in terms of services and just how some of this functionality is rolling out and generating discussion there to really dive into some of those details. So in terms of what we have coming soon, there's information here that you can see. Some of it's related to resource file support and localization support. For those of our customers that are in some of the international regions, there's more of that functionality that's coming to support the translation and localization of the Cityworks software. So being able to load language packages and having those applied across the application for all the forms out of the box, and being able to then use that as a basis to start customizing and changing terminology to be more specific to the workflows within your organizations, but already having that starting point underway. And this actually led to some of the functionality that we had in the last release of Style that allowed for the importing and exporting of different profiles and forms among different groups and organizations as well. There's some new functionality that you're going to see coming forward as well within the native apps, getting into some of that functionality for code violations and being able to support those field activities that are tied into the code enforcement process. Additional functionality is coming there. There's also the OpEx MVP, which I'll be getting into a little bit further in the slides, and then support for Esri field maps as well. And there'll be a session around this at the conference, providing more of those JavaScript 4x map widgets. So we've had, the HTML5 apps that are all using the JavaScript 4x map viewer, being able to bring some of those JavaScript 3x apps and widgets that we had in Office, that you see in Office that you're used to having access to there, and bringing those into the JavaScript 4x map experience. And so that's something that's underway and will be part of the next release. And then PLL escrow payments, custom inspections, and repeating observations. So there's been some functionality there that we've added in that's tied into what you see there as that last bullet item, the Unity field apps for Cityworks, in terms of that valve exercising functionality, that solution that's going to be coming to market soon, and provides functionality to actually, for water utilities, to develop their valve exercising program in the back office using Cityworks, and then actually deploy that out to the field and have integration directly to the WOX units using the Unity application. And from there, they can perform the valve exercising, capture the data, bring it back into Cityworks. But there's been a lot of enhancements to our custom inspections that clients have actually been asking for a while, that we were able to go ahead and prioritize as part of this process and kind of move up the scale. And some of that involves also now having resource tracking in relation to inspection. So we can do equipment, labor, material tracking there, and also some repeating conditional observations that are now tracked in with those inspections as well. There's also dashboard management, which I'll get into in a little bit here. And then looking beyond this upcoming release at what we have slated, there's quite a bit there. And part of the reason for the way that priorities have kind of shaken out over the course of this upcoming release is a lot of this release is building the foundation for the next release. So there's a lot of items that have been going into the core platform that are starting to build it so that for the next release that we have following this one, we can actually have some really significant enhancements that are taking place there. And you can see some of those described there, and I'll be getting into some of that as well in the following slides here. So one of the items that is coming soon to Cityworks is query permissions. And so this is specifically related to the queries that you see in the HTML5 apps for those dashboards. But this allows for users to actually start to get into a more enhanced security model. So this enables the ability to go through and share those queries with groups and domains, but also to transfer ownership of existing queries. So when there's a staff member who's created a query that's populated in a number of dashboards throughout their group, if that user were to switch groups, switch departments within the city, they don't take the permissions for that query with them and then essentially break everybody's dashboards. So now they can actually go ahead and transfer ownership of that query that already exists to another group member before they move on, and we can make sure that everybody's dashboards are still functioning and operating correctly. And in terms of Respond, I mentioned that we had just released Respond 3.2, sorry. And coming soon, we do have a lot of new functionality that's going to be included in Respond. And so along those lines, I mentioned the functionality that's new to inspections as part of the project that's tied into the valve exercising with Trimble. There's additional functionality as well that's tied to projects for inspections. And so for both PLL cases and inspections, there will now be the ability to go ahead and actually tie those both back to a project. And so we can now have projects that are incorporating activities from service requests, work orders, inspections, and permitting cases. And so with that in mind, on the PLL side, having those cases included means that we're also now not just tracking the resources and costs that was expended as part of that process, but also the revenue that's being captured from the PLL side. Then as well, in development right now is the extensibility model. We had that release that we showed in December 2019 at the conference that showed some pretty simple functionality. There's a lot that's taking place that is expanding upon that to allow for more of that third-party interaction across Respond within those panels. Specifically, we're seeing this a lot in requests from the permitting customers, and so making sure that when tying in with document management systems as part of plan review, there's an easy way to start to access those other applications while bringing information for reference along with them as that transition is taking place. And then with Storeroom, there's a lot of significant functionality and enhancements that are taking place with Storeroom. I've gone through, and the reason why I'm highlighting a few of these is I'm just making sure to hit some of the heavy ones where there is a significant effort that's taking place. And I want to make sure that everybody's seeing some of the large value that's coming into these applications. And so with storeroom, there will be QR code support, expanded group permissions, additional signature tracking, and also storeroom cloning, which has been something that, some of our customers who are using mobile vehicles for storeroom and are, there might be 300 items in the 300 vehicles in the fleet that are being tracked as mobile storerooms, being able to recreate those easily, the setup, the administration, and the materials that are being transitioned to those items as well. There's a few items that I did want to go into a little bit more detail here, and one of those is in serialization. So this is something that's been a big effort with Cityworks for quite a while now, and it's been something that we've been trying to track here. So you can see on the screen the early stages of what we have in place. So now we will be able to actually go through and track serial numbers for the material that is coming into the storeroom. With that, that also means the ability to track specific and individual warranty dates and expiration dates. So whether it's a piece of hardware that has a warranty date or chemicals that are being used that have an expiration date, being able to track those back to those individual items. But then if you look at what that means in terms of the life cycle process, so from that point when the material is being requisitioned, brought into the storeroom, issued through that work order, installed in the field, and then the big bang part of this is at that point, the material can then be converted to an asset. And this is where we're headed with this. We're taking that serialization process and now having that transformation from a material in the storeroom to an asset that's actually in the GIS and being able to then apply asset maintenance to that. So we'll be able to track that whole supply chain essentially. So if we have a meter, let's say that's out in the field, from the time that that meter is first ordered from the inventory side, when it's received into the storeroom and belongs to the city in terms of a property, being able to track that out on a work order, the cost of that meter that was on the work order, the installation process, and now having it exist as a material, as an asset out in the field that's in the GIS and is being tracked and available for all Cityworks activities. That's the goal that we're going for here with our serialization process. And it's something that I just want to make everybody aware of. I think it's pretty cool and really exciting. I know Brad is really excited about it. He's been working really hard on this. And it's something that I really recommend if, when you're tying in for Innovate, hit Brad's session and he'll have a lot more detail on this. And I know Brad is always up for any questions and conversation from any of our customers. And then admin as the new application that's going to be released. And so this is allowing for a lot of streamlined improvements is how I really think of it. There's some new functionality for sure that's coming in admin, but there's also been a step back as part of this process and just looking at the current processes in Designer, different pages and forms that have to be accessed for configuration, how that flows and how that user needs to navigate those forms. And that's all been taken into consideration here. So there's a lot of consolidation and streamlining that's taken place from the configuration process here in admin, as well as new functionality. And so this is just an example. If you look at the way that plugins and profiles are currently managed in Designer, there's two different pages that you need to go to currently as part of that process. By comparison in admin, it's one page. And from here, we can go through and assign which plugins the users have access to, which profiles they then have access to as part of those. And you can even see here the ability to also go ahead and bring in those language packs as part of the plugin process. Another example is here with the template configuration on the activity management. So being able to actually have one page that administrator can go to in the organization to start to look at the inspection, service request, and work order templates, and being able to look at those for all the template types and the Elm activities that are taking place across those, securities, the general information that's part of that configuration process for the default fields and values that take place, and having all of that here just on one screen. And then I mentioned that there's also some new functionality that you're going to see in admin, and that actually gets into field constraints. And so when you're looking at that roadmap, there's some items over there to the far left that start to talk about business workflow and business logic that's taking place in the system. And this is one of those items that I describe as kind of like one of the building blocks, one of the foundational steps to actually start to move towards that type of functionality. And so one of the things that we're providing here is what we're calling field constraints. And so from there, by the template type, so in this case, you can see here for contractor resurfacing, there's been field constraints that are named resurfacing costs and assets. And it's making sure that in this case, for that activity type, before that item is closed, always there is a labor cost that's tied to that activity and there's an asset associated to it. And you can see here that there's also the ability for the administrator not only to enforce those in terms of the data capture in order for this item to proceed through the process and be updated into a close activity. But they also have the ability to provide back their own validation messages here as well to the users to make sure that it's clear and that what the expectations are for how the user should proceed before they're able to actually go ahead and close out this activity. And you can see here just some of the items that are taking place. There's an expression builder that's part of it with true, false items and ranges that are in place. We also have the ability to incorporate custom fields here for the service requests and work orders. Those validations are part of the field constraints functionality. And then also this has been extended as well to the inspection observations and inspection results within Cityworks. So it's providing a lot of functionality there for users to start to develop and configure what that business workflow process is in terms of how activities are processing almost through a workflow checklist within the organization. And this is just the first step, as I mentioned, for where we're hoping to take this functionality and provide more value to our customers. So OpEx, and this is one of the items that I want to give a plug for here. Denora will be covering a lot more about OpEx at Innovate, and we also have, I believe, an upcoming down the road webinar specifically focused on OpEx as well that she'll be doing. And so with OpEx, this is really where we've had an opportunity to go through and provide significant updates in terms of the capabilities within project tracking, budget tracking, and contract tracking within Cityworks. The first release is going to be focused specifically on the project side of things. But this is how you've seen some of that new functionality that's being realized through other parts of the application, such as the ability to have projects associated for inspections and PLL cases. Those are all originating from the work that's being done here and the development effort tied to OpEx. So from here, we do have that project management side that's the first focus for the first release. But you'll see here items related to the project spatial view. And then in development, we have items that are going further with OpEx dashboards, Gantt charting, including contracts for the following release, and then eventually performance budgeting being rolled in as well as part of the overall application. So I just want to show, here's just an example of what the overall screen looks like. If we're looking at a specific project here in OpEx, diving into the project details, you can see here the ability to have a consolidated view at one point. We can view the information, the business information that's tied back to that project, all the associated work activities, if there's any correlation to existing contracts in place, the financials, which as I mentioned now, we can see information tied to equipment, labor, and material that's coming across from service requests, work orders, and inspections, but also the revenue that might be coming from any case fees if there were PLL activities associated here as well. But then another element that's new to the project tracking is the asset details. So all of the assets that are part of the project are tied here and they can be viewed as well, which also means on this next screen, you can see here as I'm looking again at that same type of view, I can go through and highlight those assets and see where they're all located side by side on the map. Another element that I mentioned that's coming to play here with OpEx is that project silhouette. So there will be functionality to actually go through and define a GIS feature that is actually outlining the project area of activity that's tied back into this project. And so there's a lot of functionality that's coming to place that many of you have been asking for, and we're able to actually go ahead and realize as part of this new release when we're working through projects off of the HTML5 applications here. And so I think I mostly stuck to my time, only went a little bit over. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. My email is actually beckyt@cityworks.com, not email address at company.org.
So our next event will be our Cityworks Innovate Virtual User Conference, June 8th and 9th, and this will be live, but it will be virtual. And Becky will be one of our keynote speakers, along with several of her subject matter experts that she mentioned in her presentation. And we will be able to see a deeper dive on Cityworks products. So sign up today. And Becky, if you have anything you want to add there.
I just want to say, in some of these situations, we can't go into great detail, but if you guys sign up for Innovate and you come to those sessions, I promise you, like in terms of OpEx, admin, storeroom, public access, all the coming functionality there, you'll have a chance to really start to dive in and interact with those presenters and the product owners and really understand not only what the functionality is that's coming soon, but the longer term vision for a lot of those applications. And have a chance to kind of even voice your opinions on a few things, I'm sure. Like you can always give them some feedback there, and they're always appreciative of it as well.
That's awesome. So thanks again for joining us today, and I would like to thank our wonderful presenters who shared with us the innovative ways they are powering Cityworks in their organizations. This takes time away from their regular work activities, and I appreciate the time invested. So as you sign off, please take our survey, and this will allow you to provide feedback and ask additional questions. And as we sign off today, let's not forget that we are bringing our communities together, and together we keep moving forward with no limits. We will see you all in June. Looking forward to that. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.